Hello you, welcome to the second installment of how to design factories in Satisfactory. Last time we covered the importance of angles and depth and how they can turn the most basic box factory into something unique and cool. Today we're going to go over a different topic, and that is overall form. Form referring to the overall shape or structure of the build. And this is very important when designing a factory. Now, this does sound kind of vague, and it is, so let's break it down into some actionable parts for you to use in all of your builds. Most of this should happen before you really start building your factory. This is called planning, and most Satisfactory players don't do this or just don't do it well enough, which leads to a difficult designing phase after they've finished all the production, and then they end up with the dreaded cube. The point of these design videos are to make factories easier and more fun for all of you goobers to make out there. So let's look at a few tools to help you plan your factories with all the things you might want or need in them. There are tons of options when picking layouts for factories. Like, do you want different rooms or areas for each of the items you are making? Or how about one long production line with your final product at the end? Different floors, or even different smaller buildings that share logistics and build for each other. These are all decisions you should make before you start building. That way you have some sort of idea on what you might end up with. Another major decision is how you want to run logistics. Do you want to hide every belt and splitter, or keep them visible in an open factory? I recommend picking one and keeping it consistent throughout the whole factory. A little side note, logistic floors look better in the walkable factories in my opinion, but they do take quite a bit more time to set up, even using blueprints, so just keep that in mind. To avoid making a cube, let's look at some examples. So here we have a square platform that has a small production line on it. And this is a very small and rudimentary example to show you, but a lot of people will start with something like this and try to build a factory around it. They make a big platform, throw down some machines and logistics, set up their production, and then try to build a factory around this. And in my opinion, this does not set you up for success. Now, don't get me wrong, you can make a square build look actually really cool, especially with a modern design. It's very common, but it's something you have to be aware of prior to building. And there are some basic techniques to avoid this. So right here, we have the same amount of production, but we have reoriented the lines to be in an L shape. Now, this isn't a perfect size or anything, but it does give you an idea about simply changing where the machines are can have a great impact on the factory layout. And you might say that there's a big open square right about here, and you are correct. And this is also part of the layout design process, is incorporating things outside of production. So if you want to have a separate little storage area for a specific factory, or maybe a location for trucks to come in, possibly an entryway, a whole room that is just designed as an entryway. These are all things that you can add to your factory and give more open space for those things. Another option you have is doing multiple floors for each production. Now this is only 2 different lines, so it is a little bit of a bad example, but most production lines, especially mid to late game, are going to be a lot longer than this, so this building would be much higher. So then it becomes more of a tower, and if you ever look at a tall building in a city, it doesn't look like a cube. It is like a pillar of glass and other sorts jutting out from the ground. And you can actually replicate that super easy in Satisfactory. Using a lot of glass and some basic walls to break it up every now and again can give you a really cool effect on a tall and more skinny building. Adding logistics floors like this also gives you the ability to hide logistics more, or you can just totally ignore this, that's fine. But these are all options that you have, and it's really easy to think about this for a little bit before you start building. Now let's look at a real game example, like my fuel plant that I have been building in my Satisfactory Let's Play series. Okay, so here we are at the fuel plant that I built a little while ago. Just a fair warning, this build is not actually done. It just has enough done to where I could switch tasks to a different important project. But I want to point something out with the designing of this build. Now, there's a lot of detail that has already gone into this build, and there still needs to be a lot more. But the overall shape is actually nothing like what I had originally planned. And I know what we're talking about is planning and having planned before you build. So this may not seem like the best example right away because I'm saying I've changed it, but I think it actually is. Because me saying I changed it means I actually had a plan prior to building it. And the biggest change was really just the size. So originally, the width of this build is about what the refineries are right now, from the end of this walkway, right about here, to the edge of the building over here. And if you see, it's now much wider on the left, and we have this little jet out on the right. It's also quite a bit taller, and I ended up changing it because I decided I want a really walkable factory. I knew that was one thing that I wanted when I was going in to build this, but as I was building, I realized I needed more space. And if you've seen any of my tips videos before, I think you know that I'm an advocate of giving yourself more space than you think you need. The original plan for this build was to be an L-shaped build, and as you can see, that is not what happened. But the reason it changed was because I added some stuff to it. I left room for a potential garage, which is what that open space on the left was. And after setting up all my refineries, I realized, well, this is a little small right now, and if I add in all my blenders, it's going to be just impossible to make an L-shaped factory that looks proportionate. So we ended up going with what we have now, which I think looks really good, but I was able to set myself up for success because I had a plan and kind of knew what I wanted to do. Okay, and this is the other example I have. Now, this build is actually following a lot more of what the original plan was. And I wanted to give you guys two examples of one that didn't follow the plan, one did. I think they're both going to turn out really well, but the second one is not done, so we can't give it judgment yet. Now, you're going to have to ignore a lot of the scaffolding that is on the outside, like these poles. Now, going into this build, I didn't know exactly the overall picture, but I did know some key elements that I really wanted to include. And that was these angled ramps right here that you can see. And these are a big feature on the outside on the sides here. And looking across the whole build, you can see angles are a huge part of this build. It's very aggressive, and this did not take a lot of planning or thought to put together. This was simply me wanting to use some crazy angles, and this is what ended up happening. If you were in any of the streams when I was making this up to this point, you would know that this is actually very much a freestyle build. I had a general idea of what I wanted, and I just kept going with it. So having the foundation of a plan is a massive part of how I was able to succeed in building something unique here. Now, this build is not done by any means, but I thought this might be a better showcase of how planning alone can really guide your build. And a little side note on this roof piece right here, something I said in the last design tip is actually something I used here, where I took real-world architecture inspiration and applied it here. I still have the image, and I've shown it on stream, of what inspired me to make this roof design. And I think it does kind of look a little cool and unique. It's not 100% done, but I think it looks better than just a basic box factory. The only premeditated idea that I had for the overall form or shape of this build was that I really just wanted to use the angled foundations. That alone is what caused this. And I think once it's done, it's going to look really cool and unique. It's something I've never done before, actually. So I hope this gives you a better idea of what I mean by having a general idea of what the whole building shape or structure will look like. Gives you a tremendous amount of momentum when building and can really spark some creative mind thoughts. And if you want to see when both the fuel plant and this build are finished, make sure to tune into the Let's Play series that is going on the channel. It has its own playlist, and I go over all my design thoughts and process throughout the stream and videos that we do on this save to help you better understand how I create some cool stuff. But that kind of wraps it up for today's design video. I know it didn't seem super in-depth, but honestly, planning is not super hard. It's very simple, and I don't want to flood you guys with a bunch of information on how you design every single piece of a factory in one video, because it's just not possible, and I don't want to overwhelm everybody. But I hope this shows you how planning can really affect your build and make it really easy to design. And another little tidbit with designing, if you hop between production and designing, it can actually really help as well, the whole flow of the building. I did this with my fuel plants and my current build with the material factory, and I think it works pretty well. But that's going to be it for me today. If you guys liked this video, make sure to leave a like and comment what your favorite part was. Let me know if anything was helpful in this video, or if you have a desired design topic for the next video, let me know. But until then, see you next time. Peace.
I'm slick with words, tongue sharp, you left in thirds. You pitching verbs, I knock it out, I'm flipping birds. While smoking herbs, I'm blocking out what often hurts. I'm moving herds.